Hello and good evening and welcome back to the Airborne Lawyer YouTube channel. And tonight I'm in Boston and I'm going to be flying the Jetblue Airbus A320 that you see just down here at stand Charlie 33 down to Washington, Dulles. In the cockpit I've got pretty much everything ready to go, and I have done the cold and dark setup. If you want to see how I do the cold and dark setup, do check out my previous live stream when I flew down to Frankfurt, and I went through the full cold and dark on that flight. But on this one I've got it all set up ready to go now, and we will be pushing back very, very shortly. So we're climbing up to flight level 380 today, that's 38,000 feet. We've got a takeoff speed of about 131 knots. We're going to be taking off in an easterly direction from Boston on runway 09 and then looping back round to waypoint Blazer, which you can just see on the Navigraph chart here. So we're going to be taking off on runway 09, which is just that one there, and going a straight line up to BRRRO, then out to Fenny, and then down Gillett, Weymouth, Dedham, and out to Blazer. And then from Blazer we will start heading south west towards the US capital city of Washington DC, and then we will be flying in. We're expecting one of the 01 runways, so it might be 01 left, center, or right. And if you look here on the map, if I just switch over to the world map, you'll see that we will be flying quite close to New York and Long Island there, and hopefully, if things are fairly clear, we will get some decent views. So that's what we're hoping for. As I say, we've pretty much got everything set up here. We've done all our takeoff calculations, got the plane all ready to go, and looking out the window just here, you can see it's looking fairly clear. So fingers crossed we'll have a scenic flight on the way down to Washington this afternoon. It's what, 9:30 or so in the UK, which means it's only 4:30 in Boston. So we've got plenty of daylight still to enjoy. So what I'm just going to do here is close the cabin door. We've already disconnected ground power. We are on the auxiliary power unit, the APU. You can see that is on up here. And just make sure I don't switch my lights off there. And what I'm now going to do is disconnect the jetway. There it goes. You can see you can hear rather the roar of the APU at the back of the plane. You can just see the APU exhaust, in fact, just at the back here. If you ever wonder what that is, if you've heard it or seen it and wonder what that is how a plane operates under its own power. It's just basically a little jet engine which sits at the back of the plane and has a generator to power up the aircraft before the engines have started. Just in the background there, of course, the very distinctive tower at Boston Logan International. I am using the Fly Tampa scenery, which I highly recommend. It's really, really good. Very, very realistic. Lots of nice effects. And we are also on VATSIM, and certainly a few minutes ago, sounds like they still are, Boston Boston Center rather, was online. So they've given us our flight clearance today via what's called PDC, so pre-departure clearance. And they've given us our squawk code on the transponder, which is 4744, which I've put in down here.
05, radar contact 10 miles southwest of the Kennedy VOR.
I'll just quickly tune out of that so we don't have that distracting me in the background. So they've cleared us on our route, as I showed you on the map a few moments ago. We're expecting flight level 380, 38,000 feet, 10 minutes after departure, squawking 4744, and we've got to call them once we are ready to push back and start the engines. So that's where we're at. Let's tune in. We will turn on the beacon as well at this point. That's the red flashing light on the top and bottom of the plane. That warns other aircraft that we are about to move. Let's call up Boston Center now and get our push and start clearance. Boston Centre JetBlue 1755 Airbus A320 stand Charlie 33 with information via PDC and QNH altimeter 3045, request push and start.
JetBlue 1755 Boston Center, good afternoon. Thanks for hotel. Push is approved. Expect runway 9er.
Push and start. Information hotel we have on board, and we'll expect runway 09er, JetBlue 1755.
Bravo 09590, are you back on the frequency?
So I've just now called out the pushback truck, which you can see here.
Bravo 09590, thank you. Descend and maintain 2000.
Just going to turn down the volume of the air traffic control a little bit there. That seems a bit loud.
3030.
And just down at the front of the plane here is where they are connecting up the pushback truck. We can in fact go right down there and have a look and see what it looks like here. You can just see the engines windmilling in the background, as we say. Right, we're ready now to... We're now ready to push back, and we're going to do a nose to the right, tail to the left pushback. And we can now release the parking brakes. And here we go. So I'm now going to jump back in the cockpit and get on with the job in hand, which is to start the engines. So I'm going to start engine number 2 first. You can just hear all the air conditioning calm down a bit in the background, which is the norm. If you listen out when you're next on an airplane, you will hear the air conditioning packs power down whilst you're starting the engines. It's just to avoid, as I understand it, avoids taking too much power away from the engines as they're starting up.
Requesting ground clearance from
This is the view from the control tower.
Via put, PWL, FQM, EWC.
So what we can see here is the very complicated layout of Boston Logan International. You've got 04 left and 04 right over here. Runway 09 is just this runway, which runs off there. So what I'm expecting once we've got our taxi clearance is that we're going to sort of taxi out through here, possibly down this way, and then hold over here. That means we're going to need to cross one of the runways in all likelihood, so that might make things a little bit interesting. So engine number 2 is now available, which means we can start engine number 1. I'm going to disconnect the pushback truck and confirm good engine start. There we go. So once again, if we just go down to the pushback truck here, you can see when it disconnects.
Delta 1688 is cleared at the Pittsburgh Airport via the Logan 3 departure. Radar vector.
Here we go. This little guy here, the marshal in the luminous jacket, will wave up to the cockpit once everything's disconnected and we're ready to go.
5 minutes after departure. Departure frequency.
Over to the side here, you can see engine number 1 spooling up nicely.
57.
And there we go. He now walks to the side, and we'll be able to see him just down there. There he is. And he will give us a wave when we are
Delta 1688
all good to go.
Delta 1688.
Left is clear, right is clear. He's telling us.
Boston, departure 3 left with.
And then he'll wish us a good trip.
Following the SID, climb to flight level 300.
Okay, have a good trip, he says. So you can hear the air conditioning packs coming on in the background. I'm going to turn the taxi lights back on now. Just a few things that we're going to do so that we're fully ready to go. I'm going to set the auto brakes to maximum.
Give us one.
I am going to shut down the APU.
Hold for 9 American 235.
Just going to check that the weather radar is on and that we have the predictive wind shear on as well. Just double check that the transponder is on, which it is. And I'm now going to check all the flight controls and get our flight services ready for takeoff. So spoilers I'll do first. They're all working fine. Then check rudder right and rudder left. Ailerons to the right, ailerons to the left, elevators down and elevators up. Our flaps need to be set for to flaps 3 for takeoff. So I'm just going to move those into position. And I'm going to set our takeoff trim. As you can see on the FMGC here, the takeoff trim needs to be set to down 0.3. It is currently up 0.2, so I'm just going to flick the button down to 0.3 down. So flaps are out, elevator trim is set. I'm going to arm the speed brakes. You do that just in case I have a rejected takeoff. The brakes will kick in and the speed brakes will pop up, and that will keep the plane on the ground and slow it down rapidly. And what I'm now just going to do is hit the takeoff config button, which shows here a whole load of things in green. If something's not right, it will say here. So auto brakes are set to max, signs are on, that's passenger signs, seatbelts, etc. The spoilers are armed, flaps are set for takeoff, and therefore the takeoff config is normal. It's just a quick check to make sure that everything is exactly as it should be in order for us to depart safely. Okay, right, we can now request our taxi clearance.
Boston Center, 30.45, runway 9er, we'll call when ready. Delta 1688.
Boston Center, JetBlue 1755, request taxi.
727.
Oh, I think we just spoke over each other. Let me try again.
Radio check. American 927.
Southwest 597 information, hotel is current for Boston. Boston altimeter 3045. Expect the ILS runway 4 right approach.
Southwest 597, expect the ILS runway 4 right approach.
So I've brought up our taxi map here.
Shamrock 1 Alpha Charlie, radar contact 50
We're
miles
just the
south
pink
of
arrow
for direction
here.
travel. Descend and maintain
And we're taxiing out to runway 9, but he's going to give us some instructions in a moment. It's just a little bit busy on the frequency.
American 1987 Boston Center, reach you loud and clear.
Thank you.
JetBlue 1755, request taxi.
JetBlue 1755, runway 9er, taxi via Alpha Kilo Mike, cross runway 4 left.
Alpha Kilo Mike, cross runway 4 left, JetBlue 1755. So what we've just been asked to do there is taxi down Alpha, which is there. There is Kilo, and there is Mike, and then we'll be at the end of runway 09. Seems pretty clear and straightforward. Alpha, Kilo, Mike. So off we go. We'll release the parking brakes, get the headset on. I use the Track IR headset so that I can just move my head around to the left and to the right. Just a little bit of breakaway power on the thrust here. So just put a little bit of power. And away we go. Once we've broken away, we will just pull the throttle levers back a little bit. Here comes another vehicle. So let's just let him go across.
American 1987, request access clearance.
Just like driving a car, always worth checking left and right.
American 1987 Boston Center, what airport are you located at?
Right, one more.
And we're now turning right onto Alpha.
Thanks, you are clear to the Boston Logan Airport as filed. Climb and maintain 10,000. Expect flight level 290 as your final altitude 5 minutes after departure. Departure frequency.
So reading the taxi signs at the side of the runway can be a bit of an art form in itself. So you can see there it says A2A, so A2 left and then A. The A is black, and that means we're on A or alpha, and then the one in yellow is the one that we could turn on to. And that's, as far as I'm aware, uniform right the way around the world. So you're on the one that is marked in black, and if you want to, you can then turn on to the one which is marked in yellow. So just at the end here, we're expecting to go Alpha Kilo and then Mike. So once again, just looking at this sign here, just coming up, you can see Alpha is in black and then Kilo is left and right. So we're on Alpha, and then we can turn left after this sign in order to get onto Kilo.
Cross Daisy, add and maintain 8,000, Southwest 29.
American 235, radar contact 3,600 indicated.
And now, if you look over here, you can see that K is in black. So that means we are on Kilo. And runways are then marked in red. So at this point we're going to be crossing the runway which is numbered 4 left, 22 right. Boston Center, JetBlue 1755, just confirming we're cleared to cross 4 left.
JetBlue 1755, affirmative, cross runway 4 left.
Cross runway 4 left, JetBlue 1755. Obviously, you always got to be really careful crossing a runway, and I know that they are using runway 4, left and right.
That's approved. Let me know when you're back on a free.
So just want to make sure it's safe to cross. Of course, you don't have to do any of this because it's just a simulation, but on VATSIM they tend to take things pretty seriously. And of course, if you take it seriously, it just kind of makes it more immersive and more real. And I can actually persuade myself I'm doing this, you know, for real to a certain extent. So what we now want to do is turn on to Mike.
Jet 1212, cross Cypher intersection at and maintain flight level 180.
And this is Mike here. So I'm going to turn right here, and we are then at the holding point for runway 09. Again, now that I'm on Mike, over here on this sign, you can see Mike is in a black square, and then the runway is marked in red.
FedEx 205 Heavy, information hotel is current. I believe you said you had it. Thank you very much. Expect the ILS runway 4 right approach.
Okay, I'm confirming we do have hotel on board and expect the ILS runway 4 right approach. FedEx 205 Heavy.
JetBlue 1755, ready for departure.
JetBlue 1755, many thanks. 1080 at 14, gust 20, runway 9er, clear for takeoff.
Clear takeoff, runway 9er, JetBlue 1755. Great, so we've got our takeoff clearance. I'm just going to turn on the strobes. I'm turning on the landing lights. I'll turn the wing lights on as well. And again, just give ourselves a little bit of breakaway power to pull away from the holding point. You can confirm here that this is definitely runway 9. There is the big number 9 painted on the tarmac. We're going to line ourselves up. And I'm going to start the timer on the flight. And I'm now just going to take the throttle up a bit. Make sure the engine's stabilized nicely. And then I'm going to advance the thrust levers to flex power. I'm just going to push the stick forward until 80 knots. Just holding the aircraft steady on the center line. Then gently release the pressure on the stick. And now we're going to wait until we get to V1 and rotate, which is coming up now. V1, rotate, pull back, and away we go. And now I'm just following the flight directors. Okay, positive rate of climb, gear up. trim a little bit.
JetBlue 1755, radar contact 1000 indicated, climb and maintain flight level 380.
Flight level 380, JetBlue 1755.
Southwest 29, leaving the airspace to the southwest. New York.
That's good. We've got our clearance straight up to 38,000 feet.
Alright, over to...
And I'm just going to pull back now to climb power. And I'll start cleaning up the wing by bringing the flaps in. So let's first of all just take it to flaps 2. You don't want to bring in all the flaps too quickly. If you do that, the plane might drop a fair amount because the flaps give you a lot more lift. So the plane's nicely in trim. I'm not actually on autopilot here, but look, no hands. It's nicely on the flight directors. The flight directors are just here, so it's that green cross in the center of the primary flight display. That's showing me how I should be flying, and I can then just use the controls to make sure that I remain in the center of the cross. Yeah, it's nice and calm out here. Okay, flaps 1 now. I'm also just going to disarm the spoilers. We don't need those armed anymore now that we've taken off. Going to turn off our taxi lights. Now that we're off the ground, I'll turn off the wing lights as well. And now I'm going to bring in the flaps completely. So we're heading out now into the sort of, as it were, the bay area of Cape Cod. How Cape Cod kind of loops round with Boston on the inside of it. And if I just zoom out on the right-hand map, you might just be able to see Cape Cod a little bit more clearly. There we go. You can see that kind of hook of Cape Cod. And we are now going to begin our turn back to the west. So initially going to head west and then southwest down to Washington, D.C.
American 2269, Boston Center, good afternoon. Thanks for hotel. Expect runway 9er. Your push is approved.
So still flying this manually. Sometimes it's just quite nice to just fly the plane. And I'm pretty sure that in real life they encourage pilots to fly the plane manually during all phases of flight at certain points, just to make sure they keep on top of their skills. Still just following the flight directors. It's nice calm weather here, so we can you know, it's not too turbulent. I can control the plane without getting too thrown around. So now through 9,000 feet. Once we get through 10,000, I'm going to be turning off the landing lights.
Shamrock 1 Alpha Charlie, descend via the Ocean 5 arrival, runway 4 right transition, the Boston altimeter 3045. Shamrock 1 Alpha Charlie, descend via the Ocean 5 arrival, runway 4 right transition.
That was a warning to say that the window wasn't fully shut. That is how realistic this aircraft is. In fact, I think I might have mentioned that on a previous video. So through 10,000, turn off the landing lights. Yeah, it's so realistic that if you can open the window on the ground, if you don't fully close it so that you can see this red ring at the top of the window handle, then you will get a pressurization alarm sound, which is what we heard just a moment ago. So I just made sure it was fully shut. So the add-on is the Flight Sim Labs Airbus A320. It's the A320 Sharklets edition, actually, which I treated myself to a little bit before Christmas last year. The Sharklets refer to what's on the end of the wing. I'll turn on the autopilot now, actually, so that we can just take a look outside. So the Sharklets are these winglets at the end here, which I assume improves the wing's efficiency. And when Flight Sim Labs updated the A320 to include the Sharklets, they also added a string of new features, and it's really excellent. So one of the main things is this delightful piece of kit over here. This is an iPad, which in flying terms is called an electronic flight bag. And you can literally just use it like an iPad. So on here you've got things like checklists, which, to be honest, if I was a better pilot, we probably ought to have worked through before takeoff. You can do your takeoff and landing calculations. We'll come back to that in a little bit. I'll just pop that up ready for landing. Over on the other side, I've got my map up there with essentially replicating my Navigraph map, which is just a nice effect. And what's really clever is that you can put your electronic flight bag on your iPhone. You can just connect it up to your iPhone so that you can run your EFB on your iPhone, which I think is just brilliant. Or smartphone, I guess. Doesn't have to be an iPhone. So yeah, this has been a really good upgrade, I think. I'm massively impressed with Flight Sim Labs. I just think this is such a high quality add-on. And it's one of the reasons I'm still flying so much on Prepare 3D. Because, yeah, Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 is fantastic. Its graphics are better, but the add-on quality just isn't there. Well, it's not there until today, when the PMDG 737-700 was released. So there's now a study level add-on for Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, which is really exciting. Looking forward to treating myself to that soon, and I will be sure to do some videos on the channel once I have it. But I do love this Airbus. I think this is my best add-on. It's just so well done. And I just hope that in the fullness of time, Flight Sim Labs get the A320 onto Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. Surely they have to. Surely they have to. So let's give you a quick update then on the flight and where we are and all that good stuff. Just going to go over now to our Navigraph screen. Here we are. So here's Cape Cod again, the hook of Cape Cod that we saw a short while ago on the screen, on the map, on the navigation display. We're now heading directly west, still on the outskirts of Boston. We're heading to waypoint Blazer, which is just here, BLZZR. We'll continue west a little bit further, and then we'll begin our journey southwest down towards Washington. Not a long flight today, just around about an hour, but it's a nice one to do. I have the scenery as well for Washington Dulles. I've got the Flightbeam Studios scenery for Dulles, which is really good. So looking forward to showing you that when we arrive shortly. So back in the sim, we've now gone through transition altitude. Transition altitude throughout the United States is 18,000 feet. So we've switched over now to standard temperature and pressure, which is altimeter 29902, or QNH 1013. That is just a measure of air pressure. It's just barometric pressure, which, when you plug it into an altimeter, can churn out an altitude reading.
Go ahead.
American 1987, you are radar contact 5,000 indicated, climb and maintain flight level 290.
Right, we're at 5,000, quickly and climb maintain flight level 290, American 1987.
Douglas 597, turn right heading 330.
You can also just do here is take a quick look at SimAware. SimAware's a map of traffic, which is flying online on VATSIM. This is us, JetBlue 1755. You can see how we've done that turn out of Boston and are on our way. This white area here is the area covered by Boston Center. Looks like we've got a ground controller on at Dulles at the moment, and there's also ATIS available. Maybe in the time that we get there, some additional controllers will come online. We shall see, but it's no great drama if they don't. It's nice and smooth now, so I'm going to turn off the seatbelts, let people walk around the cabin, our virtual passengers, that is.
Southwest 597, turn right heading 010, maintain 4000 meters established on the dock level.
So a bit of cloud around, but hopefully we should be able to see a bit of New York once we get further down the coast.
FedEx 205 heavy, wind 070 and 19er, runway 4 right, clear to land.
Clear to land, runway 4 right, FedEx 205 heavy, thank you.
So now that we're getting up to a decent altitude, let's take a look at the FMGC and see what the lie of the land is on our arrival time. So looking at the flight plan, we're looking at arriving in about 55 minutes. So not at all bad. We have got 373 miles to fly at the moment. Now when I was taking off, you might have heard me say about, so I advanced the throttles a little bit forward, made sure the power was stable, and then I said I'm now going to set it into the flex takeoff position. So something which I didn't realise until I had the Flight Sim Labs A320 add-on is that there are these detentes in the thrust settings, so kind of bits where the throttle can sort of stick and click into place, and you have the climb detente, which is where the thrust levers are set now. Then you've got the flex takeoff detente, and then you've got the takeoff go around detente for full power at the very top. And it makes controlling the Airbus pretty straightforward, to be honest, because once you are in the climb detente, you just leave it there. The climb detente is almost like a shorthand for the auto throttle setting. I'm not constantly adjusting the power here. I just leave it in this position, and the auto throttle will do the rest. Now, of course, in some ways that makes the flying experience a little bit less interesting, because you have less to do. But ultimately, all the big airliners have auto throttles in any event, so it's just an interesting way of doing it, I think. The one thing I don't know, though, in real life, and would be fascinated to know, is how the throttle works manually with the detentes there. If you're moving the throttle up, it could keep getting stuck in the climb detente or in the flex takeoff detente. I'm not sure if you can kind of deactivate them or not. I find it can make it quite tricky flying the Airbus manually, or it can, as in controlling the speed manually. I tend to find I just leave it in the climb detente during the entire flight. So now at 27,000 feet, we are making good progress up to our cruise altitude of 38,000.
5977 established ILS 4 right, 11 nautical miles, speed 180.
I have done some real-world flying in the last couple of weeks as well, which has been fun. Both times in an Airbus A320. So had a flight out to Frankfurt on an A320 and back on an A319. And then I went out to Munich last week on an Airbus A320, and I came back on an A320 Neo. That's the Airbus with the new engine, which was particularly good. I put up some posts on my Instagram of those flights. So if you check out @airborne_lawyer, you can see some of the stuff that I put up on my Instagram from that real world flight adventure. Some fun time lapses of the landing into Munich. Some videos of the takeoff from Heathrow in the A320 as well.
Douglas 597, runway 4 right, clear to land, wind 07.
Certainly it's nice after flying for real to get back onto the sim and have a go at doing this. Again, I just feel like I can immerse myself in it all the more having done it in real life so recently.
Runway 33 right, cross runway 4 left, turn left on November.
Alright, join 33 right, cross runway 4 left, and to the ramp via November, FedEx 205 heavy.
FedEx 205, I'll head to the ramp instructions for you in just a moment, but turn left on November and hold short runway 15 right.
Always busy on Boston Center on VATSIM, my experience, and you get really, really good air traffic control as well.
Your radar service is terminated. Change to advisory frequency is approved. Have a great day. You're welcome.
November 227 Sierra Mike, radio check.
November 227 Sierra Mike, Boston Center, reach you loud and clear.
November 227 Sierra Mike,
In fact, one of my favourite flights to do on VATSIM is Heathrow out to Boston, because you tend to get end-to-end air traffic control, which is absolutely first rate. So we are now making our left-hand turn over the Barnes VOR to head southwest.
Departure frequency 134.7, squawk 4732.
Just quickly show you how it's looking over here on Navigraph. Barnes is for some reason its code as a VOR is BAF. I don't know where the F comes from, but it's the Barnes VOR. So here we are. We're now on the fast track down to DC.
You're welcome. Shamrock 1 Alpha Charlie, information India is current for Boston. Advise when you have it. Expect the ILS from runway 4 right approach.
So Shamrock is the call sign for Aer Lingus. So we've got some long-haul pilots tuning in this afternoon, who have presumably flown across the Atlantic from Dublin, I'd imagine.
Air Canada 551 affirmative. I showed that you had Highland, but at Highland 6 departure, I'm having an issue with my flight plan box, and I can't add or delete anything into your strip, so I apologize.
Oh, no worries at all. We're ready to taxi.
Air Canada 556, I'm sorry, Air Canada 551, many thanks. Runway 9er, taxi via Kilo, Mike, across runway 4 left.
Kilo, Mike, and cross the runway.
So one thing which is quite interesting, just in front of us here, looking at the navigation display, is that we are going to have a very short period where we're at cruise altitude. So this blue arrow here indicates where we're going to hit cruise altitude of 38,000 feet. This white arrow here shows where we're going to start our descent into Washington DC. So it's going to be a really quick bit of cruising on this flight. It's almost parabolic, in fact.
JetBlue 2078 Boston Center, hello, squawk 4724.
Hello, squawk 40770, you said?
Negative 4724, JetBlue 2078, 4724.
4724.
Southwest 597, turn left on Yankee, join runway 33 right, cross runway 4 left, then turn left on November.
And because it's going to be quite a short flight, probably worth us starting to prepare for the approach, even though it feels like we've only just taken off. So to start with, let's take a look at flight radar. This is real world flight radar, and here's Washington, and we are flying into the international airport over here in Dallas. And what we can see is they are clearly landing in a northbound direction, and that means they're landing on 01 left, 01 center, and 01 right. If I click here and bring up the weather, you can see that the winds are at 70 degrees, 8 knots. So it's actually going to be a bit of a crosswind. The wind is coming from the right-hand side, but they're nonetheless landing northbound. If we then just go ahead and have a look at the airport itself.
Airbus A321. I'll have normal speed for you, hopefully, on the arrival very shortly, and descent on the arrival.
It will all make a little bit more sense now. Looking at this, you can see what Washington Dulles looks like. Okay, so you've got 01 left, 01 center, and 01 right over here, and then you've got the terminal area in the center.
Order advisor, American 235, you as well.
FedEx 205 at Echo, give way to an outbound Air
It's just
Canada
double checking that I wasn't being called there, because at some point Boston Center is going to hand me over to Unicom. So we know that they're landing on these northbound runways. I'm going to plan for 01 right. No, actually, we'll go for 01 center. Let's go for 01 center. And we are flying in on the Hyper 8 arrival. So what does that mean? Well, we're already on it, actually. Here we are.
Radar service terminated. Change to advisory frequency is approved. Have a great rest of your day.
Switching to Unicom 122.8. Thanks for the excellent service, JetBlue 1755.
Pleasure is all mine.
Very nice. So we've now switched over to 122.8, which is the Unicom frequency. So air traffic control is going to be a little bit quieter now. Let's go back and have a look at the chart here. So we are flying the Hyper 8 arrival. Anytime you're flying into a big airport, you're going to be flying a standard terminal arrival route into the airport. That's called a STAR, standard terminal arrival route. And it's a set path you follow with sort of prescribed altitudes and speeds and so on and so forth, so that you can all be kind of funneled into the airport safely. And it will also tell you where you have to hold if things are really, really busy. Now we're going to be flying the Hyper 8 arrival into Washington Dulles, and we're going to expect runway 01 right. Now our arrival starts at the Barnes VOR. Just a short while ago I was saying that we were over the top of Barnes, which was BAF. We are then going to go from Barnes to Big O to York to Gandhi to Kiva, Bottles, Jets, Sarah, and then we will get to the Lancaster VOR, which is, again, none of these make sense. I don't know why Barnes is BAF, and I don't know why Lancaster is LRP, but there we are. Who knows? If we just come back to the sim and take a quick look at our flight management and guidance computer down here, all of those points are in here. So you can see our next one is York, then Gandhi, then Kiva, then Bottles, then Jets, Sarah, and then LRP. Okay, so that all checks out. And then from Lancaster, this is an interesting approach chart, this. From Lancaster, we then go to Joanne, Delro, lurch, bins, and then we reach hyper, at which point we either go down the left-hand side or down the right-hand side of Dallas International, which is just here in this grey circle in the middle. So we are currently, our next waypoint is Gandhi, so we're kind of somewhere between York and Gandhi. We're going to follow this line down, then it continues from Lancaster down this way, and I think we will probably fly down the right hand side, so come down Yak, Tikhon and so on, and then we'll turn in and we will then land on runway 1 center. Now the other thing that this chart shows us is that you have to be at flight level 140 at lurch, which is shown here in the blue text, and then hyper we need to be at flight level 100 or 10,000 feet, and we need to be at 250 knots. So again, that's giving us some guidance as to how high we need to be. Further down the chart, when we're at Sigby, we need to be at 7,000, 5,000 at Moat, 4,000 at Hoosel, and so on. So we can then transition back into the sim, and that is already pre-programmed in here. So again, here's Joanne, waypoint Joanne, then Delro, and Lurch. When we look at Lurch, you can see that pink asterisk and 14,000 feet, so that shows that we've got the programmed altitude restriction. Then we've got the 250 knots at 10,000 feet restriction, and we've got to be at 10,000 feet by the time we get to hyper, and then Sigby, Moat, Hoosel, etc. All those restrictions are in place. So it's all quite clever how the approach chart ties in with what is in our flight management system. Now, if we look over here, having just spent a bit of time planning our approach, you can now see New York. So that is Manhattan just down there. It's a little bit far away. You can see Teterboro Airport just down there. That's the kind of executive airport for New York. And yeah, that's Manhattan, so Wall Street and everything is just down here. I think you can see the outline of Central Park. And in fact, it's pretty cloudless. Perfect. Why do I wear the hat? Well, the reason I wear the hat is because I have something on it called the Track IR headset, which I use to look around. So there is a little sort of infrared receiver just up here, and I have an infrared camera just on top of the main screen I'm using. And then what it means is if I look left and right like that, or up and down, I can actually move around in the cockpit without having to faff around with, you know, using the mouse or whatever else. There are other ways of doing it, but I treated myself to this Track IR headset several years ago. I think I bought this about 8 or 9 years ago, and it's been absolutely fantastic. If you are into gaming, I strongly recommend it. It's really, really good. I think what you want to try and do as much as possible when you're flying the sim is be able to just move around and do things as naturally as you would in a real cockpit. No, it has nothing to do at all with hair transplants. I do not have a hair transplant. In fact, I have. I am nearly 40, but I have all my own hair. I'm delighted to report it is just a sensor. In fact, what I'm going to do, just to prove the point, I will take off the hat and I will show you. If you look at that, you can see the sensor that sits on the cap. And that is what I use to look around the cockpit. Just looking over again towards New York. starting to disappear in the distance as we head southwest. And we are now at our cruise altitude of 38,000 feet. You may have just heard the engines start to spool back a bit there. This is what it looks like in the cabin. And over the other side, oh, there's a good view of New York. As you can see Long Island stretching away into the distance there. Here's the plane from outside, our JetBlue Airbus A320. Now, as I mentioned, we are not going to have long at cruise altitude. It's nice to do a bit of sightseeing as we see New York go behind us, but this white line here is the point at which we're going to start our descent. And that is not very far at all now. We are, in fact, just 34 miles from our top of descent. Again, I can do all of this through the flight management and guidance computer, where it says dist, as in distance, it says 33, so that's 33 miles to top of descent, T/D. So that is not long at all in flying terms, just a couple of minutes and we will be there. And in readiness for that, just to keep things ultra realistic, we can stick the seatbelt sign on like that. So please be careful when you land. It is very windy. Well, it's not that windy. We have already taken a look at the weather in Washington, but I can show you again. Here it is. In fact, that's the wrong screen. Let's try this one instead. Here is Washington Dulles. This is real life, real world weather, and the winds are 070 degrees at 8 knots. So they're going to be coming from our right-hand side, but it's not too bad. Nothing to lose any sleep over. Might just need to gently rudder the plane down to counteract any crosswind. What we're just going to do now is start calculating our landing data. So as we saw there, the winds are 070 degrees at 8 knots. The temperature in Washington is a much warmer 23 degrees. It was only 14 up in Boston, so warmer 23 degrees centigrade, and the air pressure is, or the QNH reading is 1024 hectopascals. But actually I need to put that in inches of mercury as I'm in the US, and that is 3025. We're going to do a full flaps landing. We will have all the reversers on, the anti-ice will be off, the air conditioning will be on. The airport is Washington Dulles, the code for which is KIAD. And we're going to be landing on runway 1 center. And calculating that, that gives us an approach speed of 141 knots. This also tells us some other useful stuff. So our go-around climb gradient will be 4.9% if we need to go around, which I'm hopefully we won't need to do. So 141 knots is the key thing I'm going to take from that. So we are now just 5 miles from top of descent. Again, we are coming up very close to this this white line here. And what I'm going to do is select 4,000 feet into the autopilot. That is because over here in the Navigraph chart, you can see that we go down to 4,000 feet at waypoint Hoosel. So we can just follow it all the way down. And when I hit top of descent, I will see the word decelerate appear on the primary flight display. There it is. I'm now going to put the plane into a managed descent. Again, this is so great with the Flight Sim Labs Airbus. You even have cabin announcements. Although, of course, we are flying JetBlue, we are flying down the eastern seaboard in the United States, so I don't think we would hear someone with BBC received pronunciation in quite the way we did just there. So, now that we've started our descent, what we're going to do is put in our destination data into the FMGC, just down here. So, the weather again, QNH is 1024. The temperature was 23 degrees centigrade. And the winds was 070 at 8 knots. Transition level is again 18,000 feet, flight level 180. There is our approach speed of 141, which we'd already calculated. What we're just going to do is flip back to Navigraph very quickly and pull up the approach plate for runway 1 center. So if I bring up the charts for Dulles, runway 1 center, we'll do the ILS approach. This brings up this chart here, which tells us lots of useful stuff about our landing. You can see here again, just in the, where I'm circling here, you can see that the sort of runway layout. We're going into runway 1 center, the one in the middle. This gives us a sort of a profile of what altitude we need to be at and where. And this also gives us our minimum descent altitude, and that is 486 feet. So when we get to 486 feet, we need to see the runway, or else we will need to go around. And we can put that into our flight management guidance computer like that. The autopilot will now call out minimums when we reach our minimum descent altitude, and we then need to make sure that we can see the runway and choose to land. Some other stuff that we can see on the chart here is our missed approach procedures. So in the event that we need to go around, we need to climb to 3000 on heading 011 degrees, which is basically the airport heading. Inbound to the FDK VOR on radial 200, and then we hold at FDK. Now that is shown here on the missed approach fix. So we would take off in a straight line on that dotted line, and then it carries on over here, so straight ahead, and then turning onto the 200, the 020 radial into the Frederick FDK VOR. That will also be in the FMGC. We can just double check that. If we go down to our flight plan here, Just double check. So here you can just see that we are climbing up to 3,000 feet and we are heading to the FDK VOR on the 020 degree radial. Unlikely we'll need to do a missed approach, but always good to know what the procedure is just in case. So we've already descended down through down 10,000 feet. We're at well, just below 28,000 feet now. We have come a long way since we last took a look at the Simaware map. This is our flight route so far. So Dallas is just down here, and we're just up here. So very nearly there now. Beautiful clear day down here, and I'm hoping that continues. So I'm flying in real world weather. You kind of have to if you're flying on VATSIM, just to make sure that all pilots are flying in the same conditions, otherwise things can get a bit messy. But it is clearly quite a nice cloudless spring day in this part of the US. So still no air traffic controllers on at this stage. There is an ATIS. There is automated traffic weather information at Dallas, and there's also a ground controller. The ATIS frequency is 134850. So I'm just going to tune that into the radio here just to make sure that the weather is consistent with what we've taken off flight radar. But it seems that we might be slightly out of range for that at the moment. We'll tune back into that in a little while. So what we can see on the navigation display now, which is just this one here with the green line, it is the Hyper 8 arrival we were looking at, just mapped out on our flight display. We are now over the Lancaster VOR and heading towards the waypoint labelled Joanne. If I just show you back, show you the Navigraph chart again for the Hyper 8 arrival, you can see the pink arrow is now between Lancaster and Joanne. So we are well on our way. We've come all the way down from Barnes, and then we're continuing down here. I appreciate the offer of help on an emergency landing. I don't think we're expecting any emergencies at this point. Everything seems to be working pretty well. The engines are nice and stable. We're doing a nice economic descent fuel-wise. So if you look at the engines, you can see it says idle just at the top there. That means the engines are just powered right back. And we are just, as they say, putting Sir Isaac Newton in the driving seat, and we're letting gravity do the rest. So we're just slowly and calmly descending. No need for alarm. But I think for anyone who takes an interest in aviation, it's all about the landings. It's the landings that you put the most effort into. Takeoffs are good. Takeoffs are quite exciting, but there is nothing quite as good as doing a nice soft touchdown right on the touchdown zone of the runway. Great sense of accomplishment when you get it right. So we are now going through 18,000 feet, so that is transition altitude. I'm now going to switch over to local local pressure on our altimeter, which is 3025, so it's a little bit lower than it was in Boston. Also going through 18,000, I will turn the wing lights back on. Probably don't really need them given it's broad daylight, but I think it's procedure that you put the wing lights on below transition altitude. So I tend to do that. We are descending bang on target. If you look at the navigation display, we are going to be at 14,000 feet at waypoint Lurch, and that is exactly what is required on the approach plate, Lurch 14,000. For me, a lot of the appeal of flight simming like this and flying study level add-ons like the Flight Sim Labs A320 that I'm flying today is just getting it so precise. It's absolutely spot on. I find it very, very satisfying. So our landing weight is going to be it's going to be around about 140,000 pounds. I'm not great on how pounds to kilograms work, so let me just Google that. It's going to be around about 63,500 kilograms, depending on whether you're a metric or imperial person. We are carrying some cargo on, so we have a payload of 18,700 pounds. So when you set up the flight at the beginning, you can kind of set up if you want the plane full or partially full or whatever, and it will give you a readout of how the plane is loaded. You can also see that down here again in the FMGC on the payload page, so you can see that we have got 4,603 pounds of cargo at the front of the plane, 4,731 in the middle, and 1,816 pounds towards the back. But we have a full load of passengers. We've got 54 at the front, 54 at the middle, 54 at the back. So now continuing our descent down to 10,000 feet. Now, looking at our primary flight display, I'm just going to slow the plane up a bit by putting out the speed brakes. If I just zoom in over here on the primary flight display, you can see that the plane wants to be where that pink triangle is in speed terms, which is about 250 knots. So I'm just slowing it up using the speed brakes. And the speed brakes are out here, so you can see the speed brakes just above the wing there, helping to slow the plane down. Now that we've reached 250 knots, I'm going to put the speed brakes back in, but that is always something to keep an eye on during descent. Again, speed just creeping up. It's just gravity doing its bit. So I'm just going to put out the speed brakes again. Good question on the engines. Not Rolls-Royce or GE, in fact. I think they're CFM. Let's take a quick look. Yeah, these are the... actually, I think they might be IAE engines, which I'm not that familiar with. Obviously, you normally think of Rolls-Royce and GE. Maybe the odd Pratt & Whitney, but not so much CFM and IAE. Right, we're now through 10,000 feet, so I'm going to turn on the landing lights. I'll turn on the taxi lights as well, so we're ready. And we're now starting to commence what is in effect like a downwind leg. We're going down the right-hand side of the airport. So here we are at Hyper. There's the pink triangle. We're now going to follow this line down Sigby, Moat, Hoosel, down here, and then we're going to loop back round into one centre. So the other thing that I'm just going to look out for here is any other traffic that's going into Dulles. So here we are, we're just up at the top, very near the end of the flight now. But I'm just wanting to make sure that there are no other aircraft in the area. There aren't any air traffic controllers on at the moment, so in order to maintain separation, I've just got to make sure I keep an eye out for other planes going into Dulles. So I'm just scanning these other aircraft, but none of them seem to be. I think we are the next arrival, which is good. That keeps it nice and simple. And that means I will probably do a bit of a shortcut into the airport. So instead of going all the way down here, I'll probably just keep the descent going and then do a nice shortcut here and take us back into one centre. So now starting to look out for the airports. And I think, yeah, Washington DC downtown is over to our left-hand side, but Dulles is quite a long way out of DC, I think. Of course, the really fun airport to land at is Ronald Reagan Airport, right in the middle of Washington DC. But unfortunately, I don't have add-on graphics for that, and it just doesn't look quite as good at the moment. So I'm flying into Dulles, which we should see pretty shortly in front of us. So just starting to think about landing, just double checking again. We've got landing lights on, seat belts are all on. No issues up the top here. Everything's nice and dark. The dark cockpit methodology where I don't want to see any lights. If I see lights, that indicates there's a problem. Unless it's blue, we want probe heat on. But everything else is dark. There are no fault lights glowing in yellow. So 55 minutes, nearly 56 minutes in the air, which I can see just down here on the timer, just that green text just there. So pretty short flight down from Boston. And probably just another 5 minutes or so to go from here. To see if we can pick up the ATIS at Dulles. We can't, which is a little bit odd, but doesn't matter. We have got the weather from flight radar. There are military planes available on Flight Sim. I think I've got an F-35 Lightning. There's an F-16. But they're quite fun. But I quite like the complexity of flying big airliners like the Airbus, which is why I often come back to the airliners. But I do fly quite a variety. If you check out the Instagram and check out some of my YouTube shorts, you'll see me. And there's an F-18 Hornet that I've flown through the Grand Canyon, which is quite fun. But I do fly quite a variety. But for me, the best thing of all is to fly big aircraft like this, and to try and get it right, to try and do it perfectly. So now just 4,500 feet. It's a little bit hazy out there. I still can't see the airport, but I am looking. Ah, it's just over there. I think it's just going to be in that patch. There's a kind of clearer area over there. I think that's where the airport is. So it's going to go past our right-hand side, and then we will turn back in for landing. So we've now leveled off at 4,000 feet, which is why the engines are powering back up a little bit more. Great question about the Antonov AN225. Sadly not. I wish. I wish there were an AN225 on here. I've had that question before, and yeah, it would be great to have a go flying that. But I don't think there's a really good simulation of it available. If there is, I've certainly not seen it. And once you get used to flying simulations which are as accurate as the A320 I'm in right now, you do get a bit spoilt, to be honest, and you know, you don't really want to fly anything which isn't quite as good as this. So yeah, the airport is just over here. You can see, I think, the control tower just in the distance there. There's the control tower. So we're very, very close now. I don't just fly the Airbus. I've got a 747 and a 777 and a Dreamliner. So I fly some of the heavy aircraft, heavier passenger planes as well. But the Airbus is my favourite short hauler on my sim at the moment. I say that, but if I treat myself to the PMGG 737 for Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, which I gather was released today, maybe I'll end up doing some more flying in that. So, I'm just checking my approach plate here again. What you might be able to see just down here is a waypoint called Carry. if I go back over to Navigraph, at carry, this is where this profile is really helpful. At carry, I need to be at 2,900 feet. And you can also see on here skins. And on skins, I need to be at 2,300 feet. So that gives me a good sense of where I need to be altitude-wise as I continue my approach into Dulles. All of that means for the time being, I'm actually going to stay at 4,000 feet just for another minute or so. And then I will continue my descent down to 2,900 feet, which I will reach by the time I get to carry. And that will mean I'll be bang on the glide slope. I have no Russian planes, I'm afraid, none at all for the sim. There is the airport, just over on our right hand side. So it's a little bit glary, but we're going to be landing just to the left of the control tower over there. Right, so let's now select 2,900 into the autopilot. And what I'm also going to do at this point is activate the approach phase, which is just a way of managing speed. So we're going to be slowing up at this point down to where the green dot is on the left hand side. So just there you can see a little green dot. That's known as green dot speed, rather originally. And that is what the plane is currently aiming for. So I'm now going to put out, we're through minimum clean, so I'm going to put out flaps 1. And I'm just going to do a little shortcut at this point and go direct to carry. So this is like a base leg into runway 1 center. I will be sure to put out the landing gear very shortly. Again, the plane is really well modelled, so if I forget to put out the landing gear, have no fear, the autopilot will warn me that I haven't put out the landing gear. It's also pretty calm on the speed. I'm not having difficulty slowing the plane up, so what I'm going to just do at this point is arm the speed brakes. Or arm the spoilers, so when we land they will automatically come up when we touch down. And nice and on schedule, we are now approaching 2,900 feet. Just ahead of waypoint carry. If I click the LS button there, I can now bring up my landing system display for the instrument landing system, which shows my glide slope and localizer just in the primary flight display over here. So that pink diamond needs to be on the yellow line, then I'll be on the glide slope. This pink diamond needs to be on that yellow line, and I'll be on the localizer. Just going to slow us up a little bit more. Actually, no, I will do. Let's do that. Let's put out flaps 2 at this point. Start slowing the plane down. And there we are, bang on the glide slope. And here comes the localizer for the runway centerline. So that all looks good. Now what I'm just going to do to be a good corporate citizen, as it were, for the other pilots out here, I will just announce my intentions in case anyone's planning on taking off or landing on runway 1 center. Dulles traffic, JetBlue 1755 is final for 01 center. Dulles traffic. Okay, so we're now going to go to flaps 3. And the all-important landing gear. There they go, with a clunk. Very satisfying, that. So, as predicted, there is a bit of wind here. We've currently got a 15 knot crosswind. We're now going to go to flaps full. And I'm going to take control of the aircraft. So I'm going to turn off the autopilot. When I flew back from Munich last week, I was sufficiently close to the cockpit that I actually heard when they disconnected the autopilot, because I heard that alarm. And for an avgeek like me, I found that kind of exciting. Dallas traffic, JetBlue 1755, short final, runway 01 center, Dallas traffic. So nicely on the glide slope here. Got 2 red, 2 white on the PAPI lights at the left-hand side of the runway. Well, this is interesting. There's another aircraft on the runway, so we're going to have to go around. JetBlue 1755 going around runway 01 center, Dallas traffic. Well, that's fun. So we're going to bring in the flaps, take in the gear. And we'll just go around. Bring in a bit more of the flaps. Now all I'm just going to do here is do another circuit. And come back around. Slightly frustrating that the other pilot there did not announce that he was taking off on runway 01 center, because I did say that I was on final, but there we are. All makes
November 172 Sierra Papa. I'm holding
for a fun approach, that's for sure.
This is November 172 Sierra Papa, holding on runway 1 center, or on holding line.
Yeah, I think that's the pilot who was just in the way. He's just announcing that he's on 1 center. So
November 172 Sierra Papa, can anybody hear me?
yeah, he 5x5. Were you just sat on the runway 1 center? I was calling because I was on short final. I've had to go around. I don't know if it was him actually. Maybe it wasn't.
This is November 172 Sierra Papa. Can you repeat that, please?
American 1036 is departed from Mumbai on 7 to take off, and also the guys trying to go around.
Right, so we've gone up to 3,000 feet.
So I'm clear for takeoff. Runway 1 center right.
And
Yes, you should check.
let's just reconfigure ourselves ready for
But if not,
doing it all over again. So
November 172 Sierra Papa, thank you.
just need to do a little bit. I'm going to try going into runway 1 right instead. So going to start coming down again. It's always complicated when you end up doing a go around. This time we're going into one right. So taking a look here, we need to be at 3,000 feet at waypoint Mosby, and then we need to be at 1,900 feet at Waxin. So I'm going to stick at 3,000 feet for the moment. Going to arm the speed brakes again. So gear it up. Obviously flaps are in. Just have to do it all over again, and once you're doing it out of sequence, you really have to concentrate, otherwise it's easy to get things in a bit of a muddle. Right, so we're going to have another look this time at the traffic situation on our SimAware map. Make sure it's absolutely up to date, which it now is. So here we are. This is us. You can see we came all the way down, we went into land, and then we've done a circuit. On the ground at Dulles, we have no one apparently at the end of 01 right here. So we're going to give that a shot for landing this time. Let's now go back to the sim. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We are now going to fly direct to Mosby. And I'm going to start slowing the plane down. This is quite a tight turn. So I put out 1 degree flaps. Well, actually it's not 1 degree, it's just flaps 1 on the Airbus. Put the auto brakes back on. Actually, I don't need auto brakes. It's such a long runway. We'll just cruise, roll to vacate, I think they call it. Dulles traffic, JetBlue 1755 is turning right base for 01 right. We'll report final shortly. JetBlue 1755, Dulles traffic. Just going to slow it up a bit more. Putting out flaps 2 now. And let's see if we can get the plane down safely second time around. One thing has to be said about the Airbus is it's a lot easier doing go-arounds in the Airbus than it is in other aircraft, in my experience. You can just see the airport out there. We're now coming in on runway 01 right. Right, okay. So we've captured the localizer. We've captured the glide slope just about, so I'm going to announce that I'm on final. Dallas traffic, JetBlue 1755 is now fully established, ILS 01 right. We're 8 miles out, Dallas traffic. Okay, so we've got full flaps. We have got the spoilers armed. We're now descending with the glide, so the gear can go out. And for the second time, let's turn off the autopilot, and I have control. Just had the landing config list come up here, so landing gear down, signs are on, spoilers are armed, flaps are full, which means we're good to land. Dallas traffic, JetBlue 1755 is now 5 miles, fully established, ILS 01 right. Dallas traffic. After the go around just now, I'm quite keen to avoid another, so I'm just making sure, hopefully, that I've given every warning I can possibly give that we are on our way in. Again, feeling those winds a little bit here. Winds are coming from our right-hand side at 11 knots at the moment. I can see that in the navigation display here, just top left-hand side. It shows a wind illustration with the arrow there. Happily, I cannot see any other aircraft on the runway this time, which is always good news. I can see the 2 red, 2 whites on the PAPI, this time on the right-hand side of the runway. Dallas traffic, JetBlue 1755, short final to land, 01 right. Dallas traffic. Definitely feeling the wind.
30, 20, retard, retard, 5.
So we'll take the next exit. Bring in the spoilers, bring in the flaps. And there we go. Okay, so let's just taxi in. What we can now do is turn off the landing lights, turn off the strobes and the wing lights. Dallas traffic, JetBlue 1755 is vacated 01 right, Dallas traffic. And we now need to call up the ground controller, who I think is still online. Let's take a look. Yeah, 121.9. Let's see if we can call him up now.
Call.
Who called for taxi?
United 143.
United 143. Runway 1 center. Taxi via Echo Yankee Yankee Niner.
Just turn on the APU whilst he's giving someone else some taxi clearance.
Taxi 1 center, Echo Yankee Niner, United 143.
JetBlue 1755 vacated 1 right, request taxi to the gate.
JetBlue 1755, those ground, where you parking?
I don't mind, wherever works for me.
Okay, sounds good. JetBlue 1755, taxi to the ramp via Kilo Charlie.
Taxi to the ramp via Kilo and Charlie, JetBlue 1755. Okay, pretty straightforward taxi instruction there. So we will turn off the parking brake.
Was anyone calling on frequency? United 143. Okay, good, thanks.
So this is taxiway Kilo, and then we've got to turn right onto Charlie. Let's just show you what we're doing there on the chart. Here we are. So we are, well, we're just off the chart at the moment, but we're just up the top here on Kilo. We're going to come down here, then turn onto Charlie, and we can take any one of these gates. So let's take a look. Well, we'll just see what we have available on GSX, which is our ground add-on. So Concourse A,
United 143, you need assist?
What was that for United 143?
Seems like you just taxied it to a...
okay, I'm not recognizing any of those by reference to what we're seeing on the map.
737, so we had to fix our rudder input, so sorry about that, honestly.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Let's just go for Alpha 14. That will work for us. Here comes taxiway Charlie. On the right hand side of the sign there, you can see it says Charlie off to the right. So we're going to turn right here. And our gate is just up here on the right hand side. If you've enjoyed the flight, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Do click on like if you've enjoyed it. I do try and do a live stream every week or so. And I also do some pre-recorded flights as well. On both Prepare 3D and on Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. So if you've enjoyed this, please do look out for future videos. I'll be back on the channel very soon, no doubt. So here is the gate by the looks of it. It's just a case of which... I think it's... Here it is. I can see the marshal just down there, look, in the yellow jacket. So he's going to help guide me in.
United 143, please change crew, no further DC. We'll talk to you later, boss. Thanks for flying.
Alright, we'll head over to Unicom, United 143. Thank you for having us. Have a good night. See you soon.
See ya. Digital aircraft, ground will be back at 5 minutes.
Okay, parking brakes are on. Right, let's just make sure APU bleed is on. Turn off the taxi lights. Turn off the engines. Turn off the seat belts. Turn off the beacon. And we can take a step outside. Here we are. And we can call out the jetway. And start unloading the plane.
And ground is back.
So this is the flight beam scenery for Washington Dulles, which I'm really pleased with. It's great. And I will now let our virtual passengers disembark and call it a night, I think. Thank you very much again for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the flight. Do hit subscribe, do click like, and I hope to see you again soon here on the Airborne Lawyer YouTube channel for more short and long haul flying on Prepare 3D and Flight Sim 2020. Speak to you again soon. Bye for now.